you very much for turning out on this rather unpleasant evening for this session of the Wittersham Parish Council. We start the agenda with one or two formalities. We have, I believe, an apology from Paul, is that correct?
Yes, he has a previous engagement.
So we have one apology. We then have to declare whether we have any particular peculiar interest or other in any of the items. So can I ask the councillors whether they have any interest?
No.
And do we have any members seeking dispensation under the Localism Act? No, because they want to start, I think. I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is recorded, so we're very keen to hear everything that you have to say, but perhaps I should caution you to not to go too far in any particular direction. We have with us tonight our local police constable, Darren, back there, and the tradition, I think, is to invite him to stand up and let us have a bit of information from him so that he can then return to his duties. Are you happy to do that, Darren?
I'm happy just to sort of, you carry on doing your bit and then I can have that on. I say this, if people want to talk to me, really I can, because obviously I did a thing a few days ago, so I'm more than anyone any concerns.
So he is here if anyone should have a particular issue that they wish to discuss with him during the evening. When you feel you need to go, do feel that you can. We now adjourn that part of the meeting and we open the floor to the public. It's nice to see a few people here this evening. No doubt some of you have a particular interest, probably in some planning issue or other. If we look at the planning that we're due to consider in order, the old dairy shed Little Stocks Farm is not being discussed at this point because it's not formally entered onto Ashford's list. Having said that, I believe there are some people here interested in that application. So, as I say, it seems to be pending. It hasn't been properly acknowledged by Ashford, and we think that's probably something to do with the submission.
It's invalid.
It's
basically the
invalid at
application
the
is
moment,
invalid.
but likely to return in due course. And as you've bothered to come along to talk to it, would you like to say a few words? Yes.
Melvin Smith. I live at 3 Stocks Cottages. One of the cottages affected closely from this new application. I believe the reason why the plans have been returned is that they failed to include the houses locally. So it's going to be a unfair representation of the area. So I think that's why they've been returned. But the application, the property is way beyond the building line. It's also barely 20 metres from our garden, from our property, and our back windows will look directly into the back windows of the new property. With the idea is that the hedge is going to come down between us and them. It's a massive hedge, an ancient hedge, and it was planted probably in the Georgian times on the old ditch and bank system, where a ditch was dug out, earth was put on the bank, hedge was planted on the top, it was then laid, and you can clearly see all these signs. The hedge has been badly damaged by the work which has been going on up there, work which I consider should have had planning permission, because there's been so much done up there. Trees have been pushed over, not cut down, pushed over and smashed, and also the hedge has been severely damaged, and the hedge doesn't actually belong to the applicant, it belongs to a neighbour. Also the pond at the bottom of the hedge has been filled in, all the trees have been cut down, and the building which is going to be replaced, the old dairy, was a building which was probably put up, I don't know, in the early 50s, and it was actually covered in ivy, a home for bats, a large roost of pipistrelle bats had been there for donkey's years, and they were just destroyed. And as far as I understand, there should have been a bat survey carried out on such a building, because I've been renovating ancient buildings for 50 years, and nearly every building we went in, even if it's only just a small piece of ivy, needed a bat survey. Here it was just done. And the object of the exercise was that the building was in danger of falling down. The ivy was removed, the roof was removed, they drove a vehicle through the wall into the building and still it never fell down, and it still stands now. So that was one of the reasons why I started. But the conservation side of it, I just don't know what they're thinking of. It's been described as looking like the Somme by somebody walking the footpath.
I imagine that these photographs that have been...
There are photographs. I also have photographs, and I've been studying the wildlife in this hedge for over 40 years, conducting surveys and everything else. I've recorded 71 species of birds, over 200 species of moths, and countless other insects and such like. The hedge itself is a complete ecosystem within itself. Within that hedge, there are countless symbiotic relationships going on. The hedge is self-contained. Because of its age, trees have grown which survive there, and they feed everything else. And it's recognised by the RSPB as a wildlife corridor, which means it's used as a sightline, if you like, for migrating birds. And it's nothing to see 200 or 300 warblers and swallows and that coming up the hedge slowly during the autumn, which we're now just slowing down from, taking insects. And on the top of the hedge in the summer, there's absolute clouds of insects, because they're all part of the food chain, they're all intermingled, and it's all part of the ecosystem. So any damage done to that hedge is going to completely wipe out a migration route. But I say, but the damage, we just can't understand why it's been done like that.
No.
More like a bomb's been hitting it.
Okay, well thank you very much for that. And the lady has something to say to you.
Yes. Hello. My name is Claire, and I have lived at Two Stocks Cottage since about 1962, on and off. Haven't been on it all the time, but I live there now. And for myself, I would request that please, can we have a preservation order on the last tree, the last big oak tree that is left. It's enormous, and it's an oak tree, and we all now know how important oak trees are. So I personally would like to see a preservation order on it. I'm here today to represent also my husband, and he wrote this statement that he would like me to read. I'm not going to read it all, it's rather long, so the highlights. He says, I have been greatly alarmed at the huge scale of premature and inappropriate activity on the site over the past months. This includes the felling of trees, portions of hedge, nesting sites, including the disruption of bat colony, the felling of an oak tree. He asks you, how can all of this have happened before the planning application was discussed? He therefore questions the basis of the application and asks what's really going on. He said there are aspects to the nature of the site clearance. There is a large area north of the old dairy which has been cleared to a depth of approximately 1 metre, is the width of the dairy, and is approximately 15 metres long. What is that for? So he just says there are aspects to the nature of the site clearance that clearly suggest that this application is the first in a number of attempts probably to develop the site in a much larger capacity. And he's also concerned about the access which goes down the side of Little Stocks. The day we wrote to Ashford Borough Council, there was a terrible accident on our road. If any of you are familiar with Stocks Road, you know that some of the locals like to treat it like a racetrack. They race up to the stocks, turn around and go back to Wittersham. So that entrance and exit there at Little Stocks, the hedge is right on the road. Literally, there's the road, there's no grass and then hedge. It's literally road and hedge. And the site is not good. And he's very concerned about the noise. He's older than me, and he's concerned that what they've talked about, farm traffic and houses and vehicles. He said that he thinks from his past experience he's really concerned about pending issues in regards to noise. And he says, I sincerely hope that you on the council will find sympathy with the current residents and think on all of these matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very well expressed. And another gentleman.
First of all, I'd like to support the comments that have been made previously, and then secondly, I'd just like to expand a bit upon the access.
We actually live in
Steve Brooker, we live in Little Stocks, that was mentioned earlier. So that's adjacent to the buildings that they're proposing to develop. So in the planning application itself, it makes a statement that they haven't really used the access alongside Little Stocks for 40 years. And most of the access, the farming access, actually comes across the field. They mention an unmetalled track. In the plans, they state that they're proposing to use the unmetalled track, but also the access down the side of Little Stocks. We think that's inappropriate, mainly because of the access to the road. As mentioned previously, it's dangerous. In those 40 years, the volume of traffic and the speed of traffic has increased significantly. And I think, that represents a danger to not only the people coming and going via that access, but the people on the road generally. And I think if they are considering that as part of access, there should be some sort of traffic survey to assess the risk associated with using that as an access.
It's very narrow, it's only single, it's just...
Yeah. The access really isn't appropriate for multiple households, so we think the access is inappropriate. And then again, supporting the statements about the work that's gone on prior to the application of planning or the acceptance of planning, that really does make you quite suspicious about what's intended for that site and whether they're going to actually stick to the plans that have been proposed. For instance, they mention about a Dutch barn that they're proposing to use for storage of farm equipment. But if you look at that Dutch barn, it doesn't look like it's going to be, it's not that substantial.
It's got holes in it.
It probably needs repairing or demolishing totally. So it makes you think, well, if they're going to build there and they get permission there, why are they going to build or put an application in for further development on the site of the Dutch barn, which is much higher and a bigger footprint than the building that they are considering developing now.
Just very close to the house, so lots of noise it'll be. We have parking up there, so and a fence, so if we're reversing out, we can't see anyone coming down that lane. So that would be hazardous for us trying to get in and out of our parking area. And it is literally right on the side of the house.
Thank you.
Access.
It's a little difficult to discuss in any further detail until the formal application comes in. And obviously we will anticipate your objections being made formally on the website in due course. I'm particularly sensitive, as my colleagues here know, on the subject of bats and building, because they are very severe about bats. They're a protected species, and it's very disappointing to hear what you say. In a way, it's a bit of a shame that maybe Ashford weren't made aware of these activities when they were taking place.
Ashford were made aware, and they did nothing about it.
That's not
I think
unusual.
regarding the tree, I think we did have someone come out and look, didn't we, Yvonne?
Yeah, I contacted. The large oak tree,
Yeah.
The one that's left.
yes, they were happy.
This was as a result of the lady mentioning that it might
No,
be
this was way back before all this came up, when it looked like they were going to be doing something with that site.
Sure.
I got the tree man to come out and have a look, because residents had informed me they were concerned, so
Yes.
I got the tree man to come out and he said not a problem.
So the
What do you
residents
mean
did
by
inform
that?
you
Yes.
quite long. How long ago was that?
Without checking,
Roughly.
no. How long ago was it that?
About 12 months ago now. I think.
Beginning of the summer, at least spring.
No, it was last autumn, I believe.
Dengue.
Yes.
It is that site that is that didn't.
He's the
Yes.
I can understand that the tree officer may have felt that the tree wasn't being hazarded, but the actual request from Claire was, could it be listed? Now, we're not in a position to do that. It's an Ashford matter, but she is in a position to ask that that be considered if that wasn't considered by the man at the time. When what's his name came out, he was presumably being asked, was the tree being put at risk by the work that was going on, which is a different question. Which leaves you to have the opportunity of making an application to
You
Ashford.
can understand from my point of view, if you're sitting, you can see things, and over a period of a few months, the trees go, and all I could see was hedge and trees, and now the trees have gone, and they were oak trees, and now I can see everything which before I saw hedge. When I went to investigate, as this gentleman said, all over the field were great big bonfires. Looks like, like my bonfire looks when they've had the bonfire on the salts. And there's big areas like that with great big chunks of tree. Still obviously not completely burned. I can honestly say that Melvin's talked about the bats. We used to see bats in the garden in the evening, many. And this year I've seen one.
Let me be clear, I'm not questioning or challenging anything you say. I have every sympathy for what you're saying, especially the last oak tree and preferably the previous ones that have all gone. I'm only saying that you asked that we should do something about getting it listed.
And you
It's
can't.
only Ashford that can
Oh,
list
right.
it. And what I'm saying
Sorry.
is that your position is best
Yeah.
to put to the tree officer or put to the Ashford planners that it should be considered for listing. I was anxious that when he came out and had already looked at it,
Right.
he wasn't necessarily considering should it be listed. He was saying, is it actually at risk at the minute? Should I take action?
Yeah.
And there is a difference. And I think it would be fair to say that the officers in Ashford won't go further than they feel they have to at the time.
Yvonne apparently has some relevant
Good.
correspondence.
This goes back to July last year, so 12 months ago. I went to the tree officer, Phil Cook. He says on that day, I visited the site yesterday and found a situation that does not seem to fully accord with the reports. Both structures remain standing, albeit the store/office is without a roof, and that vegetation has been cleared around the structures that appears consistent with the owner quite reasonably and proportionately tidying their site. The self-set felled oak was growing at the corner of the store, and it clearly has an impact on the integrity of the structure. Its removal was justifiable. I do not think that the oak is at risk, and that indications point to the landowner trying to tidy the site, and nothing is seemingly awry from that assessment. And then I got this as a reply asking if it were possible to put TPO on it. I do not think that it is under threat. The site has cleared, but the key trees remain. If planning permission for residential was to be sought, the removal of the tree would be harmful to such an aim. Most landowners understand this. TPO has used considerable resource across two of the council's departments and I would call upon that resource only when it is deemed necessary. If there is a substantive change or any written evidence comes to light, I would reassess. So I came back with, I'll let you know if, when I hear any more on the site, and I haven't until now.
More or less, he's saying that he doesn't think it's under any threat.
This was a year ago.
Mm.
Yeah, but there's been a lot more damage all around, more hedge taken down.
But if the tree is still there, then
Yeah.
it implies that the owner of the site is not thinking of damaging the tree.
Well, the tree turns out not to be his anyway, it's the neighbour's. The whole hedge belongs to a neighbouring landowner.
Mm.
He's cutting it down without permission.
Well, I can see, this will be a controversial application when it comes, and you must muster your forces against it, and we'll obviously take the trouble. I've actually visited the site today just to refresh I wasn't aware of the buildings at all actually, because you don't see them obviously from anywhere, but I can see that it's a very delicate one. The difficulty sometimes is that the farmers these days have considerable license to convert buildings even without consent, so there is a danger that something will happen almost regardless of opposition. But let's not be too premature in deciding. But thank you very much for coming along. We
Can I ask
heard
a couple of
Alex,
questions?
of course.
Ask a couple of questions, Ben. Could I ask, Melvin, you mentioned that the trees in the hedge belong to the neighbour.
That's right.
Who's the neighbour?
Jonathan Gale.
Has he said anything about this?
He's been and seen Roger now. He didn't realise it was going on. I pointed it out to him, and he was rather shocked to see that the pond at the bottom, which is his, all the trees have been cut down around it, and the pond has almost been filled in. Is it perhaps surprising he hasn't had anything to say himself? I'm not sure whether he sent any comments. I wouldn't know. No. Okay. But he certainly wasn't. They're going to sort out the re-fencing of the official boundary. So I can get this in perspective. What sort of diameter were the trees that had been removed? Full grown.
Tree trunks that I saw on the bonfire,
Yeah.
would you say?
There was ash trees, willow trees,
No.
sycamore tree, 100-year-old.
That size, not
Oh no.
big
No.
trees. Okay.
It's a mature hedge.
Trees.
The
Yeah,
accompanying
and
letter.
just so I can get it in perspective.
Well, the accompanying letter claims that the hedge is in poor health, with trees dying and poor health. None of the trees were dying until the roots were dug with diggers. They'd taken a digger straight down the side of the roots all the way along. Another tree blew over into Jonathan Gale's field last week with the wind, and this is what's going to happen.
When all this started, before the application went in, what did the neighbourhood think was going on?
Well, it actually happened while we was away. When we came back, we was astonished to see so much damage in such a short period of time.
And other neighbours, what did they all think was going on?
Well, we're unsure, really, to be honest. We're aware that there were plans to develop the building, and one of the sons, I think, was tidying the site. A lot of the time it was, but some of the work, unless you went down there, you couldn't see what was going on.
The corrugated roof asbestos was taken off by themselves without any contractors or official people doing so.
Has anybody in the neighbourhood spoken to the applicant?
Yes.
And what sort of response did you get?
Mixed. In as much as I was told that they could possibly later on be made into holiday lets. Someone else was told that it was going to be a house for all three of his children.
Okay, so you knew at that point
So
that they
we
were
know- we
planning
know
for
the
residential
right-
or some
we
sort.
know the- So I have asked the applicant to come round and look from our garden, or out back of our house, and see what we're going to look at. And so far he's not applied.
So did you get a sympathetic response to your inquiries?
Well, sort of, I suppose.
He didn't come round to us, we had to go to him, really,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
This was Roger, was it?
Yeah.
Roger Denker.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, he sort of kept quite a low profile.
The application though is only for a 2-bedroom property,
Yeah.
so it couldn't house 3 children
No,
anyway.
for his 2 sons.
2 sons and his daughter's going to be involved. It says on the letter accompanying the.
No, I think it's just his 2 sons, isn't it? I think When you look at the plan, the drawings for the 2-bedroom property, and you see how it is, you can see that they've thought about how the dairy was. But I asked myself, well, why did they do all of the stuff that they did beforehand when it wasn't necessary? And why is there this trench? There's the whole excavation north of the old dairy by about 15 metre deep, and the width of the dairy. I don't know. I mean, I'm just a lay person, but
We all are.
why would you make that excavation?
I think that probably we've covered this topic for long enough, and
Yes,
we'll wait
sorry.
for a
Yes.
fuller and further debate when the actual application is formally presented. But again, thank you very much for coming and
Well,
giving your views.
thank you for listening to us.
You're welcome. Would you like to leave now? You can stay as long as you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Do we like neighbours or do you ask for?
I invited those at Ashford. I invited.
And would Jonathan Dale be on that list?
This is where I think the red line has come in, because the reason I've been given that it's been made valid is the ownership, land ownership and the red line are incorrect, which would tie up with what's been said. So I think that once that's been said, so obviously Jonathan Gale wasn't part of it, not within the vicinity of the neighbours either.
Yeah.
You think Jonathan would be upset to lose his trees?
Well, and his pond.
Well, perhaps that's what's happened. That's why it's been made invalid now.
anyway, there are other planning applications on the agenda later on. Anybody here wish to speak to any of the other applications at all?
Yes, we've got Mr. Kelly as the applicant.
Mr. Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Kelly? That's fine. Let's try Bairn.
If you want to go down, because we've got hollyhocks as well.
Have we got someone?
Yes, we've got a neighbour. What's the second one? Townley Lodge. We've got a neighbour from Townley Lodge.
I just came to see if anybody needed any more information, that's all.
Yeah, same as that really, yeah.
Fine. I mean, this is your floor if you wish to say anything. We will obviously be discussing in council. Owley Lodge, Owen's on holiday.
Are the neighbours gone?
Has he gone? Okay. So, I don't think we're looking particularly for any further information unless someone wants to say.
We have a neighbour, but anyone?
We have a neighbour, Hollyhock's neighbour.
I just sort of came to say hello.
Well, that's very nice indeed, and hello. When it comes to our discussion about it, you won't then be able to participate in that. So, if you wanted to be pro or anti, this is the time to be one or other.
I just sort of came to see what it was all about, in all honesty, but I haven't looked at it, but from what it said on the letter, we're all good with it, there's no issue. Our own we're pro.
Where do you live, sorry?
Live opposite.
Opposite,
Yeah.
Vineyard.
Oak Farm Bungalow.
I'm sorry, I missed you, Jim.
Yeah, I'm Dave Spice, I'm at the Hollyhocks.
So right, so the applicant.
So it's basically just take some windows out and put some bifold doors in. I didn't even know whether we needed planning permission, but because it's an area of outstanding natural beauty, I wanted to make sure we went down the right levels.
And they're on the back.
It's on the side.
They're looking down
Yeah.
towards the marsh, aren't they?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going down the side
Yeah.
onto our big garden. Rather than so we didn't know whether we needed a planning, because we didn't know whether we needed it for some house or the garages, but it was only when we did the garage we found out there was a covenant on the land, so which we've dealt with now. So
Good. Okay. Well, Like I say, we will be discussing that, but it's useful just to hear a bit from the applicant and indeed a neighbour who has no quarrel with you, which is
No, I say you can't even see
positive.
the only way you can see where the doors are going to go, where the windows are now, is through the very end of the property across the gate. But there's going to be hedges planted up as side of the fence there anyway, so it's not going to be visible from anywhere. But I say it's on the side aspect of the house anyway.
Okay, so if there's nobody else who wishes to say anything at this stage,
We've got Mr. Kelly might have to.
well, he said he was done. Mr. Kelly, are you here to say anything particular?
Not really. I just thought I'd come and say hello, same as the lady next to me. I just thought I'd come and say that obviously with the planning and the plans we've done in Triben, we only want to build a couple of bedrooms on a one-bedroom property, which stands at about an acre of land, which should be turned, really wanted to turn it into a family home really, rather than just a one-bedroom property really that's only good for a holiday let really at the moment. But that's the application for us, so we can turn it into a family home for a family. We've had ecological surveys listening to the concerns of the other people. When we first built the property, we had bats and newts obviously removed at great cost and everything, which is fine. We like, obviously room for the nature. And we've had the survey done, and there's no newts found and everything. And basically, we'll abide by any rules and regulations that we need to do. And obviously, try and keep it in keeping with Wittersham and the surrounding area of natural beauty, really. So hopefully, no one objects to anything.
You may have noticed, I think it's on the Ashford site, that there is an objection to the project, not so much what you are planning to do, but in terms of the fact that you didn't do what was supposed to be done last time. Now, I'm not judging it either way. I just read it and thought, okay, there's someone who's saying there are problems there, which of course are now public and they've been put to Ashford.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe you would give us any of your views on that.
As far as I'm aware, the only thing that we hadn't done that they wanted us to do before was plant an orchard in there. Now, obviously, we could plant an orchard. We've only had the property built for just over probably nearly 18 months. The orchard will be planted, but if we wanted to get the extra couple of bedrooms on there, we would obviously do that. And I must say that we've had, since we bought the property, there seems to be a lot of interest in it. I mean, we just bought it as off plan to build a house there, a one-bedroom house, which we didn't think, obviously had planning for, so we started that, we completed it, we tried to do it to the best that we can. We've landscaped it, it looks lovely. We put some fencing in there, which I didn't know there was any objections or anything, but obviously gates to stop people going in there, because we've had a number of things stolen from the site already, like the tank. When we were building it, someone actually stole the whole Clarchester tank, which is the sewage treatment plant. It was actually stolen before we could get it in the ground. So obviously it's quite an area where there is issues with concerns with thieves and that. So, but as far as I know, we've got no neighbours, only right next door, which they are obviously landscaping and doing works in there and that, which we've got no objection to, right next door to us. But yeah, I mean, if there's anything anyone's got any concerns with, really they should approach us and we will do it. But once this house has had its extra bedrooms, if we can get that, turn it into a little family home, obviously we can then do the orchard and just complete the project there, really. I think that I can't see what other issues there were there as far as we were concerned. That's what it was.
And just to be clear for me, you bought the land with the planning permission.
I did,
of
yes.
a one bed, and then you built the one bed.
Yes, it's all completed.
And now you're saying, well, okay, I've got the one bed, that's great, but can I have some more space?
Yeah,
and that's obviously
it's basically concerned for family.
But you did build this, okay.
Yeah, we've actually built it.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask if you've seen the comments that Jeremy was referring to?
Sorry?
Have you seen the comments?
I haven't yet, no.
It's about the front hedge and fencing as well as the orchard. It's not just about the orchard.
So the front hedge is that's exactly the same as it was. It's just been trimmed up a bit so it doesn't go incorporate onto the road. We haven't touched the verges, we haven't done anything. We put a gate on one end where it was open. There was 2 gates on the property originally, so we've just put 2 gates back on there. We could have like a farm style gate, which we would change if anyone wants it, but unfortunately they're quite easy to see and everyone can see in there, and that's how we've had the issues of things being stolen before. So we just basically, we left the hedging exactly as it is. It took about, I think we took off about 2 metres off the top, just literally to, you know, because they were getting so tall and large, but we've left everything as it is. We haven't touched any of the hedging around the edge of the property. We haven't touched any of the fencing around the property. We've just applied 2 gates on it, really, just for security, really, and a bit of privacy, to be honest with you. So, and that's it. So, but if anyone's quite welcome to come along and have a look, I mean, you're quite welcome to do that. So, and the site was in a bit of a pickle before we got it. Listening to the concerns of the other people there, but we haven't took down any trees. We've pollarded a few trees. There is a big pond there, a natural pond, which we've retained and kept and we manage. But we haven't really changed anything else on the site, really. We was asked to remove buildings, part of the planning, and that, which is what we've done. So, only the ones that they wanted removed, which we took it down. Hopefully we haven't upset anyone. That wasn't the issue, really. We just...
Well, it's probably worth your while, well, it's certainly worth your while reading the objection. Largely, as Jeremy was suggesting, that you haven't necessarily conformed exactly to the consent that you were given previously. And that leads to...
The planning that's gone in, yeah. I didn't actually know these were there because the planning officer's only coming out on Thursday to visit the property, so...
Yeah. I think it's just a concern, you know, that you might be thinking in due course of urbanising the site further.
Yeah,
and you know, obviously neighbours have a concern about that, but we and the planners indeed have to look at it purely in planning terms, whether or not it conforms. But anyway, thank you for that. No one else, any comments on this particular application? So Nicholas's item is on the agenda, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah.
But he might like to say something now.
In respect to this?
Yes.
Okay, Nicholas, would you like to say something?
What about Tile Barn?
Well, you are not too far away from Tile Barn, but also you have an agenda item concerning possible speed restrictions on the road, and we know you're along finding interest in the...
Hopefully I can knock out Tile Barn relatively quickly, although it started 20 years ago, all right? Tile Barn was owned by a lady who lived here in the village, so I believe I never met her. And she had a kennel in the corner, and she used this space for training dogs. She decided to sell it. I can't remember her name, but she tried to sell it, and she put it up for auction in Ashford. By that time, the Beeches had been built, which was a new building, which was relatively close to my barn. And anyhow, I had discussions, or the person who owned the Beeches came to me and sort of said, I think we've got to do something about this because gypsies are interested in buying that bit of land. And that was definite. And so we both went to the auction in Ashford, and the price for this piece of land went to £120,000. Right? Anyhow, luckily, it was then held, and dare I say, the piece of land was put to sleep. The kennel was still there, and there we were. Then came a moment, of trying to do something with the kennel, and permission was given for the area to be used, should we say, but it was not to be a kennel. There were very definite instructions, and the ground was to be an apple orchard. And if you look at the plans, etc., which were given then, all right, and dare I say is that none of the measurements were followed. The piece of land, though, is in good shape. It's got conifers all the way around it. It is enclosed. It has built an extraordinary level of access. There's not a gate so that you can see through. You can see nothing through. But anyhow, I went to see surprisingly, the county council wrote to me about it. I don't know quite why I was the person. And I went to see the Hoffmans, who live in the Beeches, and together we looked over the hedge, over the fence, to see what was going on. The person who owns it, in fact, was a builder who was a friend of the previous owner to the Hoffmans. So there was all sorts of relationships. But anyhow, current owner.
Who's behind you?
Sorry.
Yes.
Wish to do certain things. I don't know. But anyhow, we then got this application or this letter I got a letter from Ashford, and I discussed it with the Hoffmans, and the Hoffmans, Mrs. Hoffman, I think is the solicitor, put down and sort of said, well, quite frankly, that's not within the bounds. One thing I did let out is that I think the conversion of the use of the kennel area was made better, shall we say, because of a reasonable relationship, between the previous owners and the current owner of this building. So that's, to me, it's very clear that it's been, as happy as it is, but but start building there. And thank you very much.
See, I bought it from an estate agent. I didn't know anything about it. I don't live in Wittersham at the moment. I live in Iden. I've lived in Rye. So I didn't know any of the previous owners. I didn't know anything about it. I just bought it because I sold my company. I had some money. I wanted to make an investment. And when I got there, I just thought, this is an amazingly lovely site. It really is gorgeous. It's a square, it's lovely, everything. And then the Beeches have actually bought, I've bought that place. There was another planning permission which was accepted for another barn conversion right next door. Now that was for a 3-bedroom house. Now I believe the people in the Beach, the Hoffmans of the Beeches, have bought this premises. What they decide to do with it, I don't know. I've got no objections what they want to do with it because it's got nothing to do with me. But that's all I'm saying. I didn't know anyone previously. I live in Rye. I have no connection with this property or any connection with it with Wittersham before. So I lived in Rye. I fancy moving out of Rye. So and that's it. But I literally bought that bit of land to develop it. I put it on the market as soon as I bought it. So I thought it was such a lovely site. Somebody else might want to build it. I could make myself a few quid. So a lot of people, I think. I had a lot of interest in it, but no one actually bought it off of me. So I said to my wife, I will build this property as it is, as spec was and everything. And all we've got to do is plant the orchard. We can plant the orchard and take the gates down. If they really upset everybody in Wittersham, I can put back 2 5-bar gates if you want me to. But it's just the fact that it's just for security. That's all it is, and it just gives it a nice presence. That's all I thought. I haven't changed anything else. I could plant 50 trees tomorrow if you wanted to, if it really made any difference. And honestly, if it's upsetting people that much, it wasn't my intention to upset anybody. My intention was just to build a lovely property in a beautiful area as per spec, and that's it. So we will plant trees, we will take the gates off if you know what the gates are.
And you're actually a builder then, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I used to run Carcraft. I own Carcraft Accident Repair Centre in Rye. And at Lid and that, so for 30 years. So no, I'm not a builder. No building nothing to do. That's why I'm here. I don't know anything about it. I probably know people that do these things for me if I had to, but no, I'm just an ordinary guy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So that concludes discussion on the planning applications. Nicholas, you have an agenda item later on connected with the road. Would you like to say a few words on?
I've just said because of various items, when asked by Ashford about the thing, Hoffman's answered all the questions about the thing, and I was asked, and I sort of said, well, quite frankly, the other aspect too is the subject of the speed of traffic there, and the danger that there is, and to come out of an outing from there with poplar trees all the way down so you can hardly see is a very, I would say, dangerous exit.
Sure. Okay, that's
and I mean, if you look to the Hoffmans, their exit, they've got mirrors, etc. And it is a dangerous piece of road.
Well, that's something for highways, obviously, to consider in due course. But just moving on to your concern, the speed that people travel down the road and the ditches either side. We've had a letter from you.
That's not on that piece of road. The place where I'm really talking about the problem is between the school and I'd say just beyond our house. There, as I said, is that I have measured out the road, measure between the white lines, which are, I don't know who puts them down, but it goes right down. And in particular the stretch where you have got the barn and you have other things like that, people do go down there, and it's no good talking about potholes now. Potholes have been filled up, but quite frankly the edges of the roads have been broken up, and there is a lot of the road is narrowed, and the actual tarmac that you actually want to go on is narrowed. There is constant break-up, on the side of the road. So therefore, if I'm coming down there and there's cars coming up the other way, and quite frankly, many of the cars drive very fast. Because the first bit straight, you're straight off the road, or you've got to take one into the gully or the ditch either side, just to make certain you don't hit each other. You've got the whole road is in disrepair because there's no gullies, there's no water, just goes down on the sides, and the water breaks it up. Sadly, we haven't got the things that they have from Bennett and other places like that, but it's breaking up. It's too narrow. You've got a large amount of parking, up by the school, because quite frankly, an awful lot of the parents, quite sensibly, come along and have got to pick up their children at 3 o'clock or whatever the time is, but I think it's around that sort of time. And you'll get 4 or 5 cars, if not more, parked along there, which makes access down there, and therefore the road on that area has also been broken up. The road needs it needs to be widened so that you've got the right distance between the white lines. That's the fundamental problem, and it goes all the way from the school. There are there's no stop signs. There's no that you can see also all the way down the road. There's so many tire marks for people braking and stopping. But it is a dangerous, I'd say, up until virtually our garden gate. The road is then a little bit better. It's just it's sheltered on either side until you get on to the next stage, when you would then again come into stages. But that road is too narrow for today's traffic and the speed that people like to go up and down the road.
I think that's exactly the issue, and I would throw in our road as well, Acton Lane, and not so much traffic. Similarly, with the large vehicles, particularly the agricultural vehicles, breaking up the sides of the road, it does reduce the width of the road, the usable width of the road, and it can lead to accidents and problems. But
I think that that is a big issue. Okay, they've got the agricultural tractors and taking them manure because unfortunately it comes from Oxley by your old house or your house. Okay, all the way to the other side of the road from us, where the vineyard is. I mean, I think we get about 2 lorry loads of manure a day. But I mean, I talk about a lorry load. I mean, it's a
huge trailer load.
It's a huge trailer load.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of that type of people coming up and down. And also, I mean, you can see lorries. And then I thought at one time, in fact, is that the road had been put to a category that you didn't get lorries. And I mean, the other factor, actually, I'm using the words from the past chairman of this earlier, sort of said, well, a lot of people use that road because of the petrol, the cost of petrol so it's a busy road, and then there was a very nasty accident there, really with one young man, okay, about 21, 22 on a motorbike, etc. Then we had to sort of take him to hospital as quick as a flash. I mean, it was so there's often bumps and screens. It just needs widening and attention.
Well, it's very difficult to find a solution here to your problem, I'm afraid. As we point out, the Kent County Council have the highways responsibility. They have the cash.
They've got cash.
We have neither. Responsibility and all the cash, but we are very sympathetic, I'm sure, to the problem because we all experience it. And I think speed is as much as anything playing these days on these minor roads.
I think to one aspect, okay, I'm told that the Stocks Road is a B road. Well, now that we've got the school, right, which has increased, I can use the word dramatically, the amount of cars going up and down. Also, I mean, some time ago, I know that Yvonne did a very good job and actually stopped, I thought, categorised the road so that buses and large lorries were not allowed to come up and down. That somehow is forgotten. I don't think we get buses, but we certainly get quite a lot of lorries. And quite often you've got to stop, reverse, go back, find a place to get off so that the people get through.
Yeah.
No help.
Unfortunately, a fact of life these days. But thank you very much for coming along, and you can be assured that we have every sympathy with your situation.
But I think if what I say is, I think that some discussions with the school need to be possibly made because then, quite rightly, I mean, they expanded the school is a success and so on and so forth. But parking, I think, for the staff, okay, which needs enlargement, okay, more there, and also greater access so that the people who drive their cars, often from the stock side, need to be able to turn round. Something needs to be done to try and deal with the school, which is not an easy issue.
No. Good, well thank you again, Nicholas, for that. Anybody else on the floor, anything to add? Thank you all for coming along. As I say, from now on we go into session and you aren't entitled to speak, but you can listen if you wish.
Thank you.
Thanks. Could I just mention to you, we have some ponds behind our house, and the lads from the village often come over, some with permission, some without, to fish in ponds. They just want to open the fence. It's easier to let them do that than to get into dispute, although we know one or two mothers. We were away this week, but we had some people looking after our house, and they discovered some of these lads fishing, one of whom had permission, the others didn't, and scarpered initially, although they left a telephone behind, so of course they came back. But apparently our house sitters, one of whom was a rather large Australian, so he had no fears of approaching these lads, and they tend to leave a bit of litter, which is rather unpleasant. But among the litter was indeed a catapult and some small stones, and it was not his role to demand to know where this child came from and go and see the mother. But this is an issue, as you know, I think probably in a number of villages.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much everywhere. He's even in town, Ashford as well. You know, I've been sort of Vicky Park running in Ashford, and you see him sort of disappearing into the woods, and then you hear like the twang of the catapult or like something hitting a tree, and it goes on. It's probably the catapult. You know, they're probably using it. Are they using it to fire the stones into the water to affect the fish or any like birds or things that land on it? Obviously, catapults are allowed for fishing, but obviously there is made ones, isn't there? But obviously these ones, they're like temporary, made, everyone makes them at home. That's the problem with permission, isn't it? You get one person permission, and then they go, well, I've got permission, but I'll bring my 15 mates. And it's like, yeah, well, you've got permission, but you haven't. Same as like parties, isn't it? When people get invited, they put on Facebook, and then of course people turn up because it's just a party and they're invited. I take it it's sort of like the regular sort of kids that have probably been sort of mentioned as being.
I think it's the thing is that the ones that have permission are the younger ones who are, we know them through distributing parish magazines and things like that. I think it's probably some of the older ones who tag along.
It's probably ones who sort of say, oh yeah, you can let me come along, or claim that I'm looking after them properly, sort of thing. But yeah, no, it's one of those really cool, just sort of calling up, giving us a message, and we'll sort of go down it, because obviously, like you say, we've got a couple of other people who've got a private pond, and sometimes people do, because there's a couple of places where it says there's no fishing. Like Park Farm in Ashford, they cleared that lake out. There's another little lake and another little bit, but it's private. It's private, fenced off, and people are climbing. So of course there's a danger of them falling in. It's not exactly like made for people to fish there. They are fishing. Of course, the thing is, one good thing is that you know who they are technically. It's not like some places on the outskirts we're getting like people fishing in rivers they shouldn't be, and trying to take the fish and stuff like that. So. But yeah, I suppose you could just take permission away from them, but if you need me to go and sort of speak to them, just let us know some details, and I can make inquiries with the ones that you know and say, look, who are they? I won't have to give names, say, oh, this person's just been identified as being there, and you shouldn't be there, or if you are there, please respect that you've got allowed permission, which can be withdrawn at any time, because in the day it's not your lake to fish in. Or pond, and you've got you abuse it, you lose it type thing. But yeah, of course, a week down the way, other people turning up. Yeah, that's the problem. It's because they don't look after you, do they? And the ones that probably were nice are the ones who get punished, don't they? So, but yeah, no, it's it probably was one of the usuals. I probably think those catapults are very easy just to remake, aren't they? Because somebody just gets them because they're handmade now. Probably some of those catapults are passed down through generations, isn't it?
But you've no particular issues with Wittersham or information about Wittersham?
No.
Can I ask you held a surgery here, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
How many people turned up? 3?
No, there was a couple, weren't there?
2.
Even on me.
Yeah, there was, I think. And a gentleman up the roads. I can't remember what it was about, but to be honest with you, sometimes it's hard, you put it out there and, people come, some don't. It depends on if they've got something at that point. I think it's the same as like parish meeting. You can advertise on coming and people don't come.
And the only thing that was raised was catapults.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's one of those ones where it's difficult because you get phone calls about it, or people just saying, oh, this is going on, and you don't get any more. So it's like, as it stopped, or they're just not seeing it because these kids have moved elsewhere. I know it's obviously happening, but yeah, the people that quite regularly call are suddenly not calling. So is it, like you say, is it they're now moving out of the village and going somewhere else, or they're just going further down out of the way where it's less populated? And then of course if people see them walk in, but they're not as obvious. So it's obviously going on. It's that reporting of it. But
There was a post on next door couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
about someone having their windows shot out at Moon Screen, and I noticed today that 3 of the windows are actually boarded up, so I presume that's...
I heard, I heard something about that. I can't remember what it said because I've looked at a couple of, I did do a report for somewhere else, and I remember seeing somebody looked at it and said there was, because that's the one at the end, isn't it? Down the sort of go.
Just down Swan Street
Oh,
at the end.
Yeah.
It's kind of in sort of like in the peripheral, isn't it? Yeah. Is that the way it's got several properties in it, isn't it? There's another one then called Moon Farms, isn't there?
There's a bungalow.
The bungalow to the, if you look at the front of the house, there's a bungalow to the right in the same property, but then there are houses opposite and...
Yeah. I think something, I remember seeing something about it, but I think it was...
Not an official report.
I'll have to check, because I know, because we have somebody who reviews the overnight calls. I can't remember if it was crimed or whether it probably has been crimed, but I've seen the call that come in. Of course, when a call comes into us, if there's a crime, then a crime report gets created, but sometimes it can get allocated to the house. But I'm aware of the call, but overall, in terms of any sort of what possibly happens, could we get a couple of calls?
I spoke to the lady on Saturday. At that stage, it hadn't been reported as I understood it officially, and I did encourage her to do it. She wasn't very keen, and I said, Crime Stoppers and all the rest of it. It is a listed building, and it was old glass that was broken, I'm told.
It was leaded
Alan
windows.
knows more about it,
She said she didn't report it because she didn't think anybody would do anything.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's that
And I did say she had to do it.
It's the age-old argument where people report it or don't report it, and then you become aware of it, but then we're not. And then, of course, the problem is as well with somewhere like that is, or it gets reported, or we get something reported, someone says, I'll report it, and then it gets reported, and it's like, well, and of course, was it damage, or was it actually attempt? Could we get a place sometimes where it gets recorded as criminal damage, but actually it could have been an attempt break, but depending on how the person does it. But of course, properties like that, is it empty, or is it somebody living in it?
It's not permanently occupied, I think. That's one of the problems.
And I think that's the problem as well, because what happened is, then suddenly that'll get damaged, maybe no one reports it, because, whether or not there's a reason they can't be bothered because it takes too long sometimes. But then what'll happen is, there'll be a couple more incidents, but there'll only be one report, because it'll be between this time and this time we've had windows smashed. So even though there might be 3 or 4 damages, it's like, window's been smashed, but they've smashed the other panes that were already smashed on that window. And you'll show one crime report for that area, when actually it's been a spate over 3-4 weeks. And we've got that in a couple of other bits, you've got derelict buildings and stuff where they just keep getting damaged, and it's just old damage being redone. So there's a hole, so the hole gets that little bit bigger and that little bit bigger, and that seems to be the problem. And it gets reported, so it's the same locations, but just damage after damage after damage. Eventually gets to the stage where it's completely ransacked. But they need to report it, but because it doesn't, so it's not reported, we know it hasn't happened in one aspect, but then you know about it. So you can do it online. I mean, somebody can report it on their behalf, but when this part of my offer is when somebody goes, they're not reporting it, is there a reason they're not reporting it? Is it because they're just elderly and the whole process they like to talk on the phone, or is it there's something else going on that they don't necessarily want to report it because it's not quite what it makes it out to be? It's always the motive.
They might be worried that
repercussions.
They actually come after them if they...
if you just reported it, it's there on the system, because if you want to report you through insurance, make a claim, through insurance you need a crime report number to be able to make a claim.
I went through all of that.
If they don't have a claim, then it's... Imagine if because sometimes people with insurance companies will contact us and say, have you had any reports about anything? And it'll be like, no, we've had nothing. And it'll be like, right, okay. And you can make the insurance. Even if it's just criminal damage, we don't know who did it. You get a reference number, and that's it. They've got it, it's reported to the police, and that's it. But it's, you can't make people report it. But unfortunately, yourselves get all those reports. Don't say, we've had this happen. It's like, well, report it to the police, or report it to the Environment Agency, or the right agency, but it doesn't, and then it's kind of just left to yourselves. And then you know, police or somebody comes to the meeting every other month, and it's like, oh, over this last 6 weeks we've had this, but it's the first time we're hearing about it, or the first time you're hearing about it, because somebody turns up and mentions it. So yeah.
Okay, anyway, thank you again
Thank you.
for coming out.
That's all right.
Hopefully we won't need too much of your assistance.
No,
Overall.
no, overall, I mean, it's pretty much, everything is, it's not too bad. I think, you know, some things with boys, it's try and get sort of when I can, but I didn't have a very good July. I got COVID at the beginning of July, so I was working from home for 3 days, and I was off. Went back to work for a week or two, and I broke my finger. And then I was on leave for a couple of weeks, so yeah, I didn't really have much of a sort of a spell for a few weeks, but I'm now back. But yeah, I look to come along again, and yeah, just go from there.
Thank you.
Did you have any?
No, I haven't, but I will look to, I've kept your email, I will look to either
If you wouldn't mind.
scan you one,
Okay.
or I'll find the link and
Yeah.
I'll send it across to you.
Thanks. Only they fade in the notice boards. I've got everything else sort of all round, but the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, my community, my community voice and stuff is, you can do it.
Yeah, okay.
Right, but I just want them to find it. It's on our system, something corporate comms, and I can send you the link or attach
Appreciate it.
a copy for you. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank you very
your
much.
See you later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.
See you later.
So, we now move into session proper. And the first item is confirming the minutes of the 6th of August meeting. We've all had copies. Everybody happy with what contained within them? And 10. 10. No, fine.
Yeah, that's just.
Matters arise. I'll need it again. Matters arising. An update on the Swan. Well, you will all have seen that my appeal has appeared on the back of Archer. I hope that people are discussing it, and I hope that I'll receive some. I've obviously had some reaction, some predictable from existing supporters, and one or two just out of the blue. But I would urge any of you who feel you've got anything to offer, or that you know somebody who needs pushing to provide assistance. I'm determined, if we can, to find a way of getting the ownership. That's my first aim, to get the ownership away from Kevin. I think, even if we haven't got a definite policy as to exactly what to do thereafter, we just need to have that in the possession of friends of the village. It may be an individual, it may be 5 or 6 people forming a limited company or a trust or whatever. But we'll wait and see. I mean, one of the responses I've had is extremely positive and offering some money as well. So that's a double whammy. But we've got a long way to go in terms of what's being asked. And there are people in the village who have money, just I'm trying to entice.
Yeah.
And anyway, all the arguments are set out in that article, so people will either respond or they won't. So we've done the minutes. Swan Sports Club lease update. There's positive news there. Jeremy, you've got the latest.
The committee have produced a draft. It has gone off to the land agent, which is Willie. Willie has passed it on to the landlord solicitor. They asked with the solicitor, the landlord solicitor, which is a different person at the solicitors.
So he is still there, is he?
I believe so.
I wouldn't want it again to go into a void.
But They were asked to if they'd respond within about 4 weeks, I think, but it did take a bit of time before someone actually posted it, so the 4 weeks started a bit later than it might have done. So there's a few weeks left for them to respond if they do it in time. Obviously, it's crucial that the solicitors have to approve it, because otherwise they're not going to get a lease into a CIO that the solicitors are advising the landlord not to like.
Yeah.
That's plain. There is this kind of assurance there, but informally, that if necessary, we know that we've got the date in March, that is when the lease runs out, but informally, and I mean this does happen with leases, it can be held over. The only worry about that is if they don't want to hold it over, you know, they say, well no, the date's run out. But frankly, that's no worse than the fact that if they didn't want to give it, they would just end it when it ends anyway. So, you know, providing they're willing to consider releasing it, they'll be willing to leave it to hand over, to hang over, there's a word for it, hold over. Hold over. It can be left to hold over. And if that goes on to April, May, providing the landlord's happy, what they say is, okay, old terms, just carry on. It does happen, commercially.
The great thing is that they are in touch with each other.
Yeah,
they know what's going on. And I like to think that we've contributed a bit to that by getting up.
I think you've stirred it well and true.
I think it's all true. The only other thing that's a bit worrying, and I only heard about the other day, is that after a period when things seem to be settling down, hostilities have been resumed at the sports club on a totally new subject.
Well, I can just soften that a little bit, because I'm holding the article of Oxney from 1984, 40 years ago, Wittersham Sports Club. The second annual veteran car rally on the sports club, sponsored by some very notable worthies: Chester Beatty, Diana Gale, Hines & Co, Hillview Garage, Paul Jackson, Philip Mallet, Owen Swetman, Paul Stern. Under 14 six-a-side football. A happy time. Clearly, reading it through, everybody was inviting everybody to come and play football and cricket and getting on terribly well. You know, it's such a pity it can't still be like that. It's a very nice little article.
It isn't like that at this minute.
Well, it hasn't been like that for, I think, 10 years.
Yeah, but it was sort of subsiding, but there's now a new, cause, whatever you call it.
The mission for them really is to restore it to how it was 40 years ago, and then everybody will be happy.
Have they got a new chairman?
I think I'm right in saying that Stuart, who is one of the old chairmen, is acting chairman, but I might have that wrong.
Yeah. That's a no then.
Stuart Hibbert.
Yeah.
So there is movement there, positive movement. Possible transfer to PC of land belonging to ABC at Poplar Farm Field. I'm going to get together with Yvonne to decide what should be written now with the information we have about some of the land being intended by Ashford ultimately for housing possibly, and we felt that if we reduced the initial request for a transfer simply to the village green, which obviously couldn't possibly be built on, we might just start the clock ticking on some kind of movement.
Just to be clear, John, that's all it's been for ages. It started off as Ashford, what are you interested in? What would you be willing? And then, after the necessary many months had gone by, I had already started restricting it to the village green. And the formal letter that I sent allowed for all the possibilities, but again, focused on the village green.
Yeah.
And I think you've seen that letter.
I have seen that letter, and that would be the basis of a further letter that we wrote. It's a question really of who we target at the other end, I think.
Sure.
You know, in the hope that they will actually take care
Johnny Shilton might be your best guide there.
Sure.
He ought to be.
Talking of Johnny, he gets an invitation to these meetings.
He normally does, but I forgot.
Ah, okay. He should remember that.
The other problem is that he's a member of the ONS committee, which is all something on scrutiny, oversight and scrutiny, and it meets the same night as we do. Now, we had the same problem with his predecessor, but his predecessor was very definite that he only went when there was anything on the agenda that he was interested in, and Johnny might have to, either there's a lot of things that are of interest, or he might have to play it a bit differently because they're now in the minority.
More scrutiny needed, maybe.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yes.
Fine. Cemetery planning application update. This is a question now of finding a suitable consultant to provide
Yes, I've got
a
3 names. It took me a while to find them, but I've got 3 or 4 that I can approach.
Okay.
We've also had an email from Charlie Reeve, who was the funding consultant, who says that funding could be possible from the Sussex Land Fund, which I picked up quite some time ago that they could be. But it does need community involvement, such as volunteers planting or preparing the site, etc. So we may need to go a bit wider on that.
We did speak about that, didn't we, in the initial meeting?
Say that again.
Charlie did speak about that at the initial meeting.
Yes, I mean, the initial plan was to use the Sussex Land Fund, and then Charlie and Tobias said, no, you can use the FIPL fund. But we now heard that the FIPL fund has run out of money. In any case, with the FIPL fund, we would have had to have done everything, completed all the admin and the work by March, which would have been a tight schedule. So in some ways, it's not inconvenient, but now they say, Charlie and Tobias say that the Sussex Land Fund looks as though it will back this, provided, as you say, everybody gets their wellies on.
But considering you're all volunteers,
indeed,
yeah.
I think for parish council it's compulsory. There's no choice, but we might get a few other
Whereas
people.
I'm paid, you see.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Are they unaware that we're in Kent and not Suffolk?
Yes. Yes.
I think it comes out, the information I get on that comes out through the High Weald Landscape bods. So because we're in that, I think that will cover us.
No, I think they've got that.
Yes.
It's backed by the Rousings. I'm not quite sure how and why, but that's where the money comes from for the Sussex Land.
Excellent.
And then, yes.
Land fronting St John the Baptist, we've been tossing dates around.
Yes, right, I've got 2 dates, 15th and the 17th
of
October.
Don't know if you saw mine.
What days of the week are they?
It's a Tuesday and a Thursday.
I think I can probably do either, but I don't know absolutely for certain. I haven't got my diary. But good.
You'll see an email from Yvonne asking.
Yes, I did send it out today.
I did see it. Sorry, I was going through them all rather rapidly, and I didn't get a chance to put together the diary at the time. But I think yes and yes. In the morning, presumably.
The Tuesday was the morning, Thursday was the afternoon, to 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, can I reply to you on that?
Please.
I think my feeling is that Alan and Jeremy are key. And I mean, we don't want to overload the thing.
No. I mean, well, I think extra support.
Yeah,
probably no more than 3, probably, but would be okay. I might just give you a little bit more detail in the lay-by. There's the brick path, which I've sort of deliberately left overgrown so that the inspector can see how bad things can get. And then there's the brick path, which is where we've had 2 falls and it needs restoration, and then the tarmac area needs redoing or whatever. I mean, for example, next Monday there's a wedding, quite a big wedding, and so I've spoken to the school and said would they mind not parking there on them that morning, and they said, well, where else are we going to park? And I said, well, there's a wedding, we're not certain who owns it, but we're trying to meet the inspector to establish ownership. As I see it, the inspector is going to try not to be the owner. Now, that might, by default, end up meaning that the church is the owner. You see what I mean? Presumably at one point, the main user would have been horse-drawn vehicles depositing enthusiastic parishioners at the church, and that would have been going on for several centuries, if you see what I mean. So it's quite likely that the church will end up owning it. If it does, then it has a maintenance issue. If it has a maintenance issue and it's used by the residents of the street and by the school, then we need some sort of funding stream to maintain it. And I'm sort of preempting a little bit the decision that might come. Certainly if there's a parking area there and it takes cars off the streets, then the parish council might reasonably, as we have discussed before, have an interest in either contributing to the cost or indeed taking on the cost. I don't know. The school who use it, I mean, in term time and on weekdays, the school are the main users and it's chock-a-block. I'm meeting with the headmistress tomorrow morning to discuss what we can do about that and see whether they've got any willingness. Because, you know, can they reasonably expect long-term free parking these days? In the same way, can the residents down that way expect to have long-term free parking? And should they all be, could they reasonably be encouraged to contribute in some way? So there are various possible income streams, none of which those who are paying are going to find terribly attractive, but I'm hoping to persuade some of them at least.
Sure.
And they include the school, the parish council, the residents, and the church itself, of course, which doesn't have any money.
I was just looking this evening, there are a couple of vehicles, obviously, that regard this as very useful free parking as well. The horse box there.
Once more?
There's a horse box and a taxi parked up there this evening.
Done by the church?
Yes.
It's difficult to park in, yes.
This is also controversial. There's an argument going on between members of the committee as to how they came to be in the position of some of them treating it as free parking when others felt that they shouldn't or haven't. I know that there's squabbling.
And there's a lot of parents use the village hall car park in the mornings and in the afternoons.
Do they? Because they can't get in down there.
Yeah.
Is that unreasonable as well? I mean, should they be expected to?
I'm not a village hall committee member, so I wouldn't tell you.
And in some ways, you know, if a deal could be struck to allocate an area here for the school staff for a fee, you know, an annual fee, because it's a very big car park. Isn't it? I mean, down the bottom end, you could probably house quite a lot of the school staff.
All the good.
Anyway, as you say, we're prejudging what the situation might be.
And I mean, for instance, the week before last or whatever it was, on a Sunday morning, I went out to put the cone out to try and reserve it for the rector. And it was vacant. I thought, well, that's good, I don't really need to put the cone out. So I actually went down to the cemetery briefly and came back. And by the time I got back, somebody, unknown who, had parked in the celebrant's space. So there was nowhere. And I mean, Lindsay takes it on the chin. If it's Jeanette coming to lead the service, she doesn't like it if her parking place isn't there. You see, it gets the morning off to a very bad start. And anyway, I'm just going to show you this. I took these photographs of I don't know if you can see them there.
She's younger.
Can you see those? I think Sue's seen them. It's probably a listed wall, so we probably need planning permission. Just some signs on the church wall to try and.
Oh, I see.
So that's another area where the parish council might be in a position to be supportive, if you see what I mean. That's going for PCC next week when I'm on holiday. But anyway.
You mentioned before that it might fall into the church. I mean, it depends whether it was the church's parking or the sort of wide bit of the road. But let's just say it did fall into the church. I don't know that this would be likely, but it must be a possibility as to how the definition is given of the closed churchyard. Is the closed churchyard places where bodies are buried, or is it the precincts of the church? Because if this suddenly becomes part of the church land, I know there's a wall between the two, but you may find it could be argued to be part of the closed churchyard immediately falls on us, as I understand it.
I mean, it's a nice line. I appreciate.
It's one that I'm sure they would find their way to if they could.
Well, the church, or
the church.
I find it very attractive. and you know, I might just slip it into the PCC agenda next.
It just depends on how the definition of the closed churchyard is written. I would have thought.
Yes. I mean, you see, realistically, I mean, the last burial in the church was 1903. So realistically, when we don't get a stream of visitors, I suppose we do get the occasional genealogist.
We could bury it under the proximity to the church, double rate.
It's an very interesting line. I could develop this one if that's right.
Okay, well, there will be a meeting.
So anyway, I'm meeting with the headmistress tomorrow, the highways inspector in a couple of weeks, and the parish council in a month.
Can I just float this point? I did say this to Alan on Saturday. When we have this meeting with Kent on whenever, in October, and we are talking about who owns this land with an open question as to whether the parish council should take it on, then I do think we really need to be clear as a parish council that this has got a lot of noughts on it.
Well, it would be.
It costs significant
we would look at
money.
minimum 20,000.
Okay, and therefore, that's all I'm saying is that we need to. It's not to say we couldn't afford it. I'm just saying that we ought not to just blunder into it.
I'm hoping the school might put their hand in their pocket, but who knows? I'm always an optimist, you know.
I find that hard to believe because the school just have not got the money.
But then, can they reasonably expect free parking?
Well, I
So
don't
they
see
can
why
park
not. It's
they
a
can
free
park
piece
somewhere
of
else if they
land.
like, but they haven't got anywhere else. You see, it's difficult.
Yes.
Well, some of them used to park in the school grounds in front of the kitchen.
Yes,
that
but
seems to have stopped.
No, they've still got
They
some
still
cars
do.
going there.
Yeah. But they've got many more cars now than they had 20 years ago.
Yeah, they've got
And
a lot of TAs
you know, I've mentioned things like shared journeys and that sort of thing, and shared transport for staff and children.
That does bring up a point actually, very interestingly in material, John, if you'll allow.
Okay.
I just happened to spot, because I never read them at the time obviously, when we got the response from Kieran Doble to our HIP presentation on Zoom, it had two attachments. One of them I'm going to raise when we get to it, which is about the speed limit and what have you. The other one was about school travel plans. And there's a whole load of stuff there, which is KCC, a brochure about how the schools can manage their travel issues. And that's something, I mean, maybe you pass it on to Alan, Yvonne, tonight, because he can print that off for tomorrow.
Yes. Is that easy?
Is it easy for you to print it off?
I can print it off.
Yeah.
Mine-
It's long. It's long. It's in the Kieran Doble email, which was last April or May. That's last year. And
I have had two residents from the street who don't want to be named recently who've said to me how awful it is at school collection time when their drives get blocked, etc., etc.
Well, I can actually echo that. I was stuck in the street for 10 minutes last week while the school bus tried to go up and a tractor with a trailer load of hay was trying to come down.
So I mean, tomorrow morning I'm getting a bit outside my role, but with your permission I might mention things like that, only with the council's permission, because I'm really concentrating on how to fund the lay-by. But if I can mention the other problems...
Which it doesn't help, we've got a builder in the street at the moment.
Yeah.
Takes up a lot of
that's right.
parking
Well, that's a
spaces.
big problem. Yeah.
Consider it.
Perhaps they'd allow parking in their front drive.
Well, I think they do, but not enough.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's knock that one on the head. The local plan explained consultation. Is that referring back to what they did in
Yes, well, it's a case of, is there anything, do we want to say anything as a parish council, basically?
We have visited and noted, haven't we, what's proposed, and other things may be proposed in the meantime.
I mean, it's going to come back again when we'll have a proper, so shall I say no then?
Okay. Our caretaker meeting with Ashford Borough Council officer, very pleasant young lady, and on the back of that, a letter has gone in, or...
Oh yes,
yes, that's right, Jeremy composed the letter, didn't he?
Yes. Yes, long letter.
That's right.
And I tidied up the figures. I looked at them more carefully
well done.
and came up with slightly different inflation.
1st of August it was. I have chased it. I think I said before. She was away, officers were away, but she's now come back to say that it has, proposal is being discussed. And she will come back to us at the end of September.
This year?
I would hope so. She didn't actually state, so.
No, well...
But I will keep an eye on that, so, you know, by the time we meet next.
No, well, thank you, Jeremy, for putting that together.
I'm looking for this thing for Alan, and I've got it on my computer at home, but I'm afraid it doesn't seem to show on here.
Well, you could forward
I'd send it to him straight
you,
away.
you could forward it to me now. Or
That's what I do.
No, wait, sorry, when you get home.
Oh, here we are. I have got it.
Okay. Saves you a problem.
Does.
Oh no, sorry, that's Alan.
Another false start.
No, as far as I can see.
That's when you get home.
I've got to remember that, Alan.
You'll be writing it down.
I've got to remember to look.
Whether I've got it.
What?
Okay. First planning application, well, we've had comments from the floor. We are not put in a position to pass comment ourselves until this becomes a formal application. Number 2, Owley Lodge, Owley Farm. I circulated a few comments as a neighbour. I personally would not object, but anybody else I know.
Can I just say, as I said earlier, one of the neighbours was here, but he's Rush Green Cottage and Rush Green House are the two that can see it, and both of them said that they're not objecting, although they don't want to see many trees come down. That was their issue.
What was the name of the gentleman here?
That was Brian
Moyle.
Yes.
Brian Moyle.
Yes, his wife was Clark.
Yeah.
2 times before me.
That was a long time ago.
Is it very
And he's a voice from the past. I haven't seen him for years and years and years. I didn't recognise him.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well, I guessed who he must be, but...
They're both still there, are they?
She's not.
No, she's not.
No, she's no longer with us.
That's right.
So there's not Owley cottages, they're Rush Green cottages.
Yes, Rush Green, which is further down.
Further down the road.
Yes, as you go on down and beyond, you've got the bend.
So they're looking back up.
Yes.
Because Rosemary Downey's the other one, isn't
Yes, she rang me today.
Yes.
And said that she was the one that said about the trees. She wouldn't want to
Are they
see.
the only people that will be able to see it, given that it's a 3-storey property?
I don't know, I haven't heard. I consulted loads of people on that one.
But they're the only two. Valley. I don't think that
they're the only two that came back to me.
And they're just, if I can just clarify, they're leaving the summer house or conservatory and the sitting room and knocking the entire bungalow down and then putting the new house on the bungalow site.
That's what it appears to be.
They're sort of doing a nuisance, really, aren't they?
I think they're very fortunate in a way. I mean, this bungalow is on a huge site. I mean, it was Piper land, and Whether or not there was an issue when they first stuck something on there, I don't know. But it's a big bungalow on a big site in a lovely situation.
And it's not that old.
No,
Probably not, actually.
it's probably
80s maybe.
25 years old.
But from our perspective, I don't know that there's any particular reason
Why not?
for objecting. So I would move that, that we agree to support.
I'm
Yeah.
supportive, it's
Yeah,
long way
yeah,
off public road.
It
I
is,
think,
I
think
agree.
there was a letter in from the forestry people, wasn't there, about trees and...
Oh yes, that was just a general, but
Yeah.
we've got so many planning applications, we can't answer this one. However, the planning
can't
officer
do
has
this,
got
this
to
and
bear
this,
all
yeah.
these things in mind.
Sure. Me too.
Fine, so support.
Support.
Sport.
The hollyhocks, we've had the owner here and the neighbour not objecting, and
No.
I don't think anybody else has got any problem.
Okay, sport.
Support that. Triburn, I mean, it was interesting to hear
Yeah.
the owner, who seemed to me to be a reasonably honourable sort of person, that, you know, if he is just looking to turn it from a one-bedroom to a two-bedroom, I mean, none of us like the idea of it starting in the way it started in the first place, isn't it? Which was rather sort of pushing.
I don't know that we emphasised enough to him the fact that what was unsettling was that he hadn't completed his last task. I'm not sure he really picked that up. I think he tried to go back saying, you know, he was leaving it as it was. I don't think he really picked up that that was a big area of disappointment, and it's quite likely to cause him to fail.
Well, the question is whether it's material, I think.
Well, I think as long as he does read the Hoffman letter and does something about it, he might be better off.
Yeah, but the thing is that the complaints aren't necessarily material. In other words, when you put in your planning application, you say this, that and the other,
Yeah.
but it's only certain things, I think, which are, you've really got to do the same.
Yep.
Now, the planners will deal with that. You know, I don't see any reason why we don't draw, well, we hardly have to draw attention to it, but we can do. We note the other objection, and that's for the
I think it
planners.
looks awful.
I haven't been down to look
Cheers.
because of the fence.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
that's
the
the
dead
key.
conifers,
Yeah.
because
That might well be material because it's the street scene,
Yeah.
of course.
Mm.
What do you call it, post and rail fence.
Yeah.
The problem on the other side is I totally understand, especially since it's not occupied, that security was a problem.
It doesn't give a nice impression at the moment. It
No.
gives an impression of there's something dodgy going on behind
Yeah,
you.
it
But
In true
I don't
Wittersham
know,
style.
I was quite surprised. He didn't seem to me to be a total sort of white boy, you know, which I'm sure we've seen plenty around here. And I did go and look at that one. I've been around them all today, and actually that gate was open, well, so I just opened the gate and sort of stood in the doorway, and you've got this very small place right in the back corner, which even with an extension will still be very small. And then this vast area of lovely grass, which he says, well, of course I'll put an orchard in, you know. Well, I think he might, you know. But it would be really irritating if, you know, in 2 or 3 years down the road, he was to try and turn it into a 5-bedroom mansion. You know, I didn't really get that
That might be
feeling.
on the way.
I didn't necessarily, although if we can include our comments about him not fulfilling his obligations previously, a sort of qualified support, I suppose, maybe, I don't know. Does anybody feel we should object?
No, I think
I'm not
support,
sure we've
support
got-
with comments though
I think
about the
support drawing
fencing and
attention to the fact that we've considered that objection and it's for the planner to decide whether those points can be enforced.
yeah.
That's a much good
Because that's the issue really. If they
Because
can't enforce it, there's no point making it, you know, it's not right to turn down the new planning permission because of what he didn't do the first time.
Yes.
If you can't enforce him doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And we know where enforcement is at Ashford.
Bob on.
Bit like on the to-do list.
So is that enough for you? Fine. So now we move on to the War Memorial, where we find now that to do anything radical, we need to apply for planning consent, for which we don't have the time in order to have things up and running for November. We have a practical suggestion from Alf as to how we deal.
Yes, he will do what he did before and clean it up directly before the
power wash
members. Yes.
Is he going to be back by then?
Oh yes.
Yes, when's his operation?
20th.
And he's off from mid-October, isn't he?
Sorry?
Is he off from mid-October?
No, September.
September, sorry.
2 to 3 weeks, so he should be back middle of October.
Right.
20th for 2 to 3 weeks.
So that doesn't stop us considering the quotes that we've had, which at the moment amount only to
2. I would
I
like
read
to
those
have the
off,
one.
There is. I'm sure you will get it. I'll chase it. Because
Can I
people
together?
can't, as they're saying, we discussed practicalities and Greg was there, and then we must just perhaps with Greg's oversight as well. But I think the 9th quotation is ridiculous, and out of the original one at 14,000 or whatever it was. So
Can you talk about the numbers, not when you're trying to get another quote, because you've got the microphone on.
quite right.
Can I just clarify that this one is actually the one that used to work with Ray Pilcher?
I don't know.
Oh, we don't know.
No, that's not
No,
it.
that's,
It's Keith.
that's the one from
Keith
Paul.
Clover. Keith
Yeah.
Clover.
This is one that
This is
Paul.
one that Paul.
Yeah.
This is one
That's
that Paul.
the one that Paul
It is,
recommended.
My concern, I obviously, the first one we had, I met them and I went through everything, discussed a possible problem under the first step. This one, there's been no actual discussion. It was just, I believe, taken from the plan that Greg produced, so there's been no discussion on site as to this is what we want, this is what's there. That's my concern.
Sure.
So that would, if it looked the most attractive, that would be the next stage.
Yes,
You bring it into
to be.
site,
Yes,
confirm we're matching like with like.
yes.
Yeah.
You did ask
And
sorry, go on. No.
yes, and the fact that there could be a problem with that first step, which might.
Should we not do that then
Cost.
before we either get another quote and then decide?
Yes.
Because otherwise, if we decide on the second quote, and then when we meet with him, oh, well, actually, no, the quote's now gone
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can do that.
So I'll chase up Keith Clover and say, Keith, you've taken the trouble to come to site.
Yes.
Are you going to put something in?
Keith Clover has worked for me in the past, and he's very good and he's very reasonable, and he's very receptive to suggestion and thoroughly cooperative. I can recommend him as a person.
So and that quote, of course, will then provide part of our planning application, presumably, because they'll want to know.
Well, it's
what
yes,
that
it's
is doing.
the list of building consent is what we need first, as to whether, and that will then lead us to whether we need full planning application. And as I think I told you, the details they need are quite detailed. Like they will need to know the manufacturer of the stone. So until we've got until we've got all the quotes with all the details, we can't even go for that. So
You did ask me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was going to say, in the meantime, we know that Alf will sort out the service beforehand.
You did ask me to look at this before. I skimmed the main terms and I thought they were less one-sided than they often are at quick review. I'm assuming this price has to have VAT added onto it. They don't say it one way or the other. And I did notice, I didn't know how you were going to deal with this, that they wanted an electricity supply and access to mains water.
Doesn't it say if necessary?
Which one is that?
Yeah.
Which one is
That's
that?
this one.
And he does
Oh,
mention
okay.
that and portable.
And he's getting
Well,
a
it just says
petrol
allows
for
free to
cement.
Yeah.
provide.
Because Keith
But he's
Cole may
getting
not,
a-
Yeah, but he did
Keith Cole may
mention
not
about...
do VAT.
No, well, we don't know.
We don't
So
know.
we don't know about
We
this
don't
one
know.
either.
We get the
But
VAT
that one
back.
looks though it does, it's automatic.
We get the VAT back if there
No,
is.
what I mean is,
but-
we may not be charging VAT in the beginning.
Indeed. Well, it's, yeah, maybe. But they've only got 80,000 to go, and that's not very much when there's 2 people working in it. Right.
Okay. So, the next issue is correspondence. Request for donation from Outlook on Oxney. This, I understand, is a regular annual request. Biannual, every 2
We
years.
get 2,
No,
no,
well,
twice a
well,
year.
it's semi-annual then.
Twice a
Semi-annual,
year. Twice a year.
Right, and we regularly agree because we obviously want to keep it going. So I think we approve that. Everyone approve? Yes.
I will pay it out of next month when we'll have the precept. Because that's the reason why we do it
Yes.
in 2 stages.
Nicholas Hurst, hooray, hooray. We have dealt with his issues as far as we can. We can only be sympathetic.
What I've just done, I went through his letters and I've made sort of a list of the main things. The width of the road, which he has obviously gone to great lengths to go out and measure. I had contacted Darren ages ago about it, and he came back with a sort of very nondescript, not particularly wonderful answer. So I went back to him again and said, can you definitely tell me about the width? And he said he couldn't do. He what is
Are we
he can't
talking
answer the
that
height. No, this is Darren Anderson, our highway steward. He can't answer the question, so he's raised it as an inquiry. So he's put it on the fault reporting thing, so I've got a number. And he's asked schemes to look into it and update me with their solutions. Well, this is taking me down the road of adding it to our highways improvement plan. They're talking about schemes, which makes me think that that's what they're going to, they're going to do. They haven't come back to me yet. So we've got, and what I sort of said, are we looking at speed restriction or a narrow road sign? Because you can get those to indicate it's narrow road signs. So this is what I'm waiting for an answer back on. And then of course I came up with asking Nicholas whether he wanted to officially request for a speed restriction, which once again, we want to put it on the highways improvement plan?
No.
Because obviously it's not used as much as I had explained to him, that it's not a B road. All right, it gets a lot of traffic, but it's not going to have as much, it doesn't get.
I think if Nicholas was to consider this more carefully, he might come down along the side of leaving the road really narrow with a narrow road sign. Because I mean, my feeling is that a widened road just makes people want to go faster.
Right.
And I mean, I members of my family don't go down that road if they can possibly help it. They'll actually turn around in the middle of these and go down the main road because they. And if we make it wider, they will decide they do want to go down.
It's a hugely risky road for getting bumped into people or them bumping into you. It's unclassified, which I think means it has no particular width. It could be a single track road.
Yes.
It's just whatever it is.
So we don't
no
want
obligations.
I don't believe Nicholas has thought it through carefully.
And the trouble is, it's not a little lane that goes from nowhere to nowhere. It goes between 2 significant villages, so it gets quite a bit of traffic. And he's right. Everything he says is right. Can he get anything done about it? Absolutely no chance.
No.
Your best possibility, well, not nothing then. Either a sort of like a polite notice, warning that narrow road.
That would put people
says, well, I know what it's like to go down there every week or every day. And secondly, and this would cost us, a formal narrow road, which you can of course get a weight or width restriction. we'd have to pay for that because KCC would have to agree it and put through a thingy order after consultation, like the speed limit. And then people will ignore it, but at least he can go out and take pictures and ask for enforcement.
Yeah.
That's all you've got.
Well, as I said earlier on, I think, you know, he's by no means alone in that road.
He's right.
All the country roads around here.
Yeah.
They're all like that. And we turn them all into motorways and we've got another sort of disaster.
Yeah.
So, are we saying that no, we will not go for that?
Yeah.
Once again, with the large vehicle restriction, that's what he was after as well, but that's...
Well, that could go on the hip if we really wanted to, and then we'll find out if Kent says no chance, we are not willing, or, yeah, we'll look at that if you bring money.
So, do we want to?
Well, that's what
we're...
The large vehicle restriction.
It could be a
Well, that
weight.
often goes with...
They just follow sat navs, don't they?
Oh, yeah. It won't stop them going.
No.
But it does make it illegal.
Well, and the farmers. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what the farmers would assume,
Well, that's when
that they have a right.
Yes, well, their access would have to be allowed, wouldn't it, to properties down
Yes.
there?
It
So the
usually
farmer
is.
would still go there anyway.
And I think
It usually is.
once that happens, there's no point in doing
You
anything
see
else.
big lorries going up to Leeds, you know, they can't go right through Leeds, but they can go up to the place where they deliver.
the other thing was his non-existent drains. Well, they are there, and we've been through this. And the ditches, when he mentions that the ditches and all the stuff that has grown high, well, it's grown high because that's what was taken out of the ditches to clear the ditches.
Yes.
And the ditches behind are now clear, but we've now got all this.
It's put on the front.
over a few centuries, what will happen is there'll be a...
It will go back in the ditch.
Like you do in Devon, you know?
Yes. Parking facilities for the school should be found and off-road for residents.
Well, I'm on the
Big
case
field
about
opposite.
Alan's on the case.
I mean, has he got any suggestions where?
Big field opposite.
Have they?
What, the orchard?
I'm sure that would be his idea.
One of them is part of the depending on which way you look at the sports field, the far end, so you would go up and down Bud's track and into the back of the sports field. It would reduce the size of the sports
So
field.
the school would lose their playing field?
Yes. Not all of it, obviously, just enough of the park. The start.
Bud's Lane is a private road.
And the other...
Down Bud's Lane, you're talking about Bud's Lane?
No, Bud's to the track to Bud,
Oh, I see,
towards down,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
where I mean. And the other one was for the people at the top of the road. If you go up Stocks Road, you can go into Piper's Field and then round the back.
You can't be serious.
Go down the back of Bud's Lane?
No, before that, there's an entrance into
Yeah,
Piper's
side of it.
Field. Yes, and if you come round that, you could then gain entrance through the field that's there to the back of their houses.
There's actually a big garden just along there, and that technically is brownfield land.
Yes.
I think you're referring to Miriam's, not mine.
Oh, the new one, right. No, I was
So,
referring to
so
one where-
yes, he does have
Coronation.
places for them to go.
I mean, that's never going to happen, is it? It's not. I mean, I don't want to be unrealistic. I think he's trying to be taken seriously tomorrow. So I don't think I'm going to go there.
And I did say that, I mean, the ideas are terrific, it's just not practical.
Well, most of it's private land.
Yes. Oh, but parish council could buy the land.
Okay, fine. Anyway, Yvonne does a wonderful job keeping Nicholas at bay.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just, he's interested, you know, it's just nice to feel that some people are
full of ideas.
Are interested.
He cares.
Exactly. Working with party reports. caretaker.
Yes, well obviously as I've said, he'll be off on the 20th for at least 2 weeks. He will speak to the bin men because that's the biggest problem about emptying bins, but they are quite good apparently about emptying the bins. He just does it with an extra time. And I'll inform the other villages. Apparently the bin men don't actually empty any bins in Stone, so that could be interesting. And he will keep up with getting those things started. In fact, I put down here cutting Coronation Field hedge shortly, but I noticed as I come along that he's just done that.
Just on the road.
So, yes.
He's done the cemetery footpath today as well.
Aye, yeah, thank you. I mentioned that. And he will, Memorial Garden, he will cut the grass there. It's one of the last things.
Have we managed to appease the lady weeders?
Yes.
Oh, we have?
Right.
Excellent.
I did speak to him. Yes, so that's
Fine.
all I have.
Okay. Monthly transaction statements. You've sent
You've all seen them now. Yes, I've already seen them 2 months because you've got July's and July's was a big one.
I'm a bit anxious here because it seems that we need to have a memorial for the clerk.
What
It says management of memorials for clerk.
Yes. That's in a minute.
Anything particular that we need to draw our attention to?
Obviously I was moving money about, but I sort of colour coded it so that you can see where it comes and goes.
Fine, everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Yes.
So if you would mind signing that one, please. And obviously that's the breakdown, but that's just maybe a bit of obvious. And then we come into August, obviously, which is a lot smaller. I don't think there's anything. Quite straightforward. Okay.
The problem that shows up there very clearly is that the caretaker balance that used to be quite substantial is now exhausted, and that's even with you. I remember you saying that you'd increased their contribution from 4 to 5, but you've increased it to 6.
Yes, no, it was 6.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
to 6.
it was 6.
And
I'm chasing the invoices outstanding.
yeah, what I
So
don't
we
know,
get 19 coming
yeah,
in.
what I don't know, Yvonne, and I don't know if you can figure it out, when we started the caretaker scheme, we used to pay about 2,000 something to get our work done by KCC, and we made it 3,000. We put in 3,000, then we made it 4. The question is, obviously there will have been inflation in what we had to pay, but we have yet reached 6, so are we now subsidising KCC and ABC, which comes back to your point? I mean, we weren't actually subsidising, we were running out of money, but now we've run out of money and we're in deficit.
Yeah, so we want to see
I think it's the salary increases that have looked at.
That's a huge amount of it, yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. C, that's just recording our support for 2 planning applications.
Can I just carry on with finance just for a minute? I received the external auditor's report today. Came in. Each year they are required to undertake additional audit work for a sample of smaller authorities, and we were chosen this year, so there was a load of other stuff I had to provide. And the basic audit was fine. They hadn't made any comments on that, but the only thing that they have said is that if you remember when David couldn't do the internal audit, we had to get Roger Roger very kindly offered. But it wasn't minuted. So they picked up on that I hadn't minuted that we'd asked Roger before it all happened. And so actually I don't think that we have officially asked David if he will for this year, so I should put that on the agenda. So I did feel after all the extras I had to provide that was fairly
pretty good stuff.
I didn't mind.
Yeah.
So their criticism was that we actually asked Roger, and Roger did it, but we didn't minute that we'd asked him.
That's right. It should have been minuted in the first.
And they did, because she rang me about something else as well, and the fact that the notices that I have to put on the website as to when the public can come, because August was manic for me. I was childcare and holiday, which I don't normally have in August. I had to date it a day before this specified timing, because it's all done on time. I had to do it a day beforehand with the time limit, and she said, well, that was wrong, you shouldn't, statutory thing says it should be so many days before. I said, I wasn't physically here. You know, what's your answer to that? She couldn't really come up with one, but so that hasn't actually been mentioned, but that was one of her objections that I hadn't.
Never mind. I'm sure we'll survive.
I think you do a very good job.
Yes, I think we record our congratulations.
Are you still with Claire Foster, KF?
Oh no, Massars. We've been there for
that's right.
a couple of years now.
PKF, PKF were in the dirt just recently because they were the auditor of one of the big councils that's just gone down, you know, a few billion or something.
Birmingham.
I don't think it was Birmingham, it might have been Woking or Thurrock or something. Yeah.
Well, one of them that they picked up on last year was the fact that there's a petty cash bit that we had to fill in, and we'd always ticked, all of them, the internal auditor always ticked yes. They never picked it up, but Massars last time said, hang on, you don't have petty cash, do you? Yeah, you're ticking that yes, you know, the records are correct.
Yeah.
So, yes, but, so they had picked it up when PKF happened. So they are tighter, but they're new, so
and they're smaller.
That's
Smaller,
why. Okay, so
okay, done, finance. Okay, we move down
to the planning.
Yeah, planning, fine. We've supported 40 new fields, supported 23 Forge meets, and I'm glad to say that Kathy's annex in the Red Garden has had its...
Yes, and also the 14 Jubilee Field has been granted as well. That's the solar panels on the front. The ones that are on the rear hasn't, although they came through at the same time. So I don't know
why they had to on the rear roof.
Okay, any issues on open spaces?
Nothing new.
The cherry tree.
Ah, yes.
Planting the cherry tree.
Yes. What are we doing about that? Did we decide?
Well, we've got to decide.
Well, we agreed we were going to buy one. I don't know, long before me, but
yes, we did. It's a case of
what species?
What exactly? It was all to do with the Queen's favourite, because she had a favourite cherry tree. That's why it was the cherry tree was.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these cruises are rather short-lived, and I mean they look nice for 2 or 3 years, but then they sometimes just throw in the towel. Things like winter flowering cherries last longer.
Right, we did have one before, a winter flowering cherry, which did. That was sort of on the boundary bit between Coronation Field and the Memorial Garden, but that got vandalised.
Is it worth another go then?
Winter flowering?
And you're more likely to have it there in 40 years' time than you are most of them.
Is it the winter flowering when the flowers come when there are no leaves and the leaves come when there are no flowers, or was that just one?
The blossom comes in sort of January, February, which
February.
is quite endearing because there isn't much else doing it.
Okay, you just have one then.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit cheering, a little bit cheering. It's not terribly dramatic. It's just a little bit cheering.
I'll have a word with Alf as well, because he's up on
Yeah.
on that. Good idea. I've got also, I'd like to mention now that the benches that we've had very kindly donated by Roger Parker, Alf has picked them up, so he's storing those at the moment until we decide where.
Will he screw them to the ground?
Exactly, that's what he wants to do.
Yep.
When we decide where to put them, I would like one to go in the play area. It's Ashford, so I'm going to have to ask Ashford to do that. But there was one before, and when they resurfaced ground, they took it out and didn't replace it. And people have been asking about that. So
That's a
that
good way
would
of
be
using it. Yeah, one of them anyway.
another one perhaps on Coronation Field. Two of them are fine, one of them will need a hose down as to get whatever's
One could
on it.
go just, I lose thought at the minute, on the grass by the bus stop at the end of Lloyd's Green.
Once again, it's Ashford Borough Council.
I know, but you
You'd
could
like
ask.
me to ask?
Yeah.
Because there was one.
On the concrete standing.
That's where the concrete
It's on the
but that
stand,
will be
isn't
in
it?
the way of
Yeah.
the notice board. We better stand between the notice board and the bench.
And of course, if it was on the grass, I'll have to mow around it, but anyway, it's the thought.
Well, Alf will probably have the best ideas as he covers every inch of the ground.
Somewhere he doesn't know.
Okay, public rights of way, any broken fences, damaged?
No, the footpath along the side of Four Oaks at Swan Street needs attention.
So which landowner is it? Because that's
It'll be the gentleman in Four Oaks.
Four Oaks.
Is that where you said some cutting back in? Yes.
One side's been done, but not.
No, one side's a close boarding fence now, and the other side is.
Oh right, so it's been replaced. Okay. Thank you.
Highways? Do you think of anything from the dreadful state of
I did
North
speak to Jeremy about the flashing sign coming
Next
into
Friday,
Wittersham.
only Friday this week, he couldn't do
Oh,
it
I
on
can
Friday
fix.
gone because it was raining, he didn't do his job, but he's hoping to do it this Friday. I spoke to him this morning.
moving it, or is it not functioning? It's
Cutting the hedge so people can see it.
Okay.
And the other thing that Sue brought up was the sign and the bollards at the top of Swan Street, and where the potholes have been. No, you're joking. Been marked.
The delay, you mean?
Yeah.
From the 29th of February.
29th, yes. So I asked Darren again what was happening, and he checked up, and the works haven't been programmed. So
A couple of weeks ago, 2 transit trucks came with traffic lights on. Stayed there for about an hour and then went off again.
Yeah, one place.
right.
Yeah.
Well, so he's asked the bod to find out what's going on. In the meantime, I've asked them to be removed if they're not. You know, it's just. So I'm waiting for response.
There is also a tree that has rotted and come down on Hunts Hill, and it's because it's very narrow there. It's literally right on the edge, and I'm just concerned in the dark that someone's going to go into. It's not a very big tree. I don't like that, but I'm not sure who owns that piece of wood. I think it might be Harry Metcalf, but.
I'll ask after.
Okay. Cemetery churchyard, other than what we've already discussed.
No.
Yeah, I'd like to think about that, but
yeah. Good luck with your meeting.
Only just that if you remember back in July, I attended the workshop at Maidstone Cemetery on memorial safety.
Yes.
Which was very interesting. It's a massive cemetery. Goes on for. Has anyone been to Maidstone?
Is it the one off the road south?
Yes, just before.
There's an archway thing on the right.
there's a lot of death in Maidstone, isn't there?
Oh, it's incredible. Anyway, we had it was a we had lunch. Got lunch there. in the chapel. The whole thing was done in the chapel.
Rather spooky. Unexpected visitors.
And we were taken out to do our own checking to see what was acceptable, what wasn't, and what to do. And we actually need a memorial safety policy, which we don't have. However, I have got a template for that, so and obviously I will have to carry out a memorial check as well.
This is a hangover from the leaning stones and if they're falling over.
Yes, it's a safety aspect thing, but it's a case of when they move and what you have to do.
And the constraints,
degree of movement as well.
The constraints on new memorials, are they in our cemetery, for instance? People can only have a certain height. Yeah. So you don't get the old problem.
No. And they have to be, show the where they have the bits that have to go into the ground, go into the base, and the bits that go from the base into the bits that's upright as well. It's all around there, all these things. Very interesting.
Alan, have the arrangements for the church toilet changed?
Yes. Because from the walker's perspective, so what should happen is if On's there, she'll unlock the church toilet on a Wednesday and then lock it again. But because we had the vandalism there once or twice, then I lock it after the service on Sunday. Vince unlocks it and I lock it after the service because Sunday afternoon was peak time for extraneous activity. Unfortunately, as you probably know, I didn't manage to lock David Chesson in there today. I've been trying to lock somebody else in ever since, but I haven't managed yet.
Oh, it's just the last 2 weeks it's been unlocked, and I wonder whether the arrangements have changed.
That's an omission.
Right, okay.
Do you wish us, if we find them unlocked, do you wish us to lock them
Yes,
afterwards?
please. No, it hasn't changed. I was conscious that one Sunday I got home and realised I hadn't locked it. And I thought, blow it, I'm not going back. And I think last Sunday I locked it, but I can't remember. One Sunday merges into another. But I mean, the protocol is that Vince unlocks it on Sunday, I lock it. And Yvonne does it on Wednesday. Otherwise, it remains locked. Because otherwise, people get up to all sorts of things that they really shouldn't be doing on a Sunday afternoon.
I went along with like we do with gates. If you find it open, you leave it open, which is what has happened.
Well, I think no, and in fact, the last time I went, it was wide open actually. So,
Well, see, if we found it open on Wednesday, it would have been left open.
If you find it open on Wednesday, lock it.
Lock it. Okay, thank you.
After it's been used, don't lock anybody in. Keep it away. Although it does cause a certain amount of village amusement for some days.
I'll try not to do that.
Okay. Date next parish council meeting.
Can I bring in one or two things?
No, in a minute. We have the date first. And you look at your agenda, date first, then you can.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, date next parish council meeting, 8th of October 2024. My apologies, I shall be in America and my able deputy, Mr. Alan.
Well, I'm really travelling on the date of the Zoom meeting.
If I can get the necessary connection, but of course there's a time difference, you see, I'm going to be 7 hours.
Well, you'll be up and about, you'll be bright and early, it'll be lunchtime.
Yeah, could be. I can't promise, but I will try and do the Zoom.
Well, I'm happy to chair on the 8th.
Yeah.
On the 1st, I think I should. Hang on, it's the 1st, I think. It's Tuesday. I think I'm going to be travelling.
Well, the 1st is informal. We'll discover whether you or I can do it. If not, we'll pass.
Sue is the ranking councillor by length of service.
Excellent.
Definitely not me.
I'm very pleased for you, sir.
I'm looking at Jeremy now.
So I think I'm going to be in transit somewhere, so I don't think I'm going to be...
Transit?
I don't think I can do the Zoom, but this meeting is fine.